You want answers?
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended the Shaolin Temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
Welcome back, everyone. 51 after the hour, and I'm going to start this rant with something that has nothing to do with marijuana or drugs at all. I had a completely different rant planned for the day, but when I saw this story pop up at the top of the Huffington Post, I knew I had to say something about it. So here it is. The headline here reads, Martin Erzinger, Morgan Stanley wealth manager, won't face felony charges for hit and run. All right, check this out. This is in Colorado, and the Colorado prosecutors are not going to charge him with felony hit and run because they don't want him to lose his job. Martin Joel Erzinger, who manages more than $1 billion in assets for Morgan Stanley in Denver, Colorado, is being accused of only a misdemeanor for allegedly driving his Mercedes into a cyclist and then fleeing the scene. Colorado's Vail Daily reports the victim, Dr. Stephen Milo, whom Erzinger allegedly hit in July, suffered spinal cord injuries, bleeding from his brain, and, according to his lawyer Harold Haddon, lifetime pain. But District Attorney Mark Hurlburt says it wouldn't be wise to prosecute Erzinger. Doing so might hurt his source of income. This is from the Vail Daily, quote, felony convictions have some pretty serious job implications for someone in Mr. Erzinger's profession, and that entered into it, Hurlburt said. When you're talking about restitution, you don't want to take away his ability to pay. We have talked with Mr. Haddon, and we have heard their objections, but it's ultimately our call. Okay, so Milo, the Dr. Milo, the guy that got hit, he lives in New York City, actually. He was out there vacationing in Colorado. He's furious about the drop charges, the Vail Daily says. The doctor's line of work has also been threatened by the incident because the guy is a liver transplant surgeon. So the hedge fund man, the billion-dollar wealth manager, runs into the bicyclist who's a doctor who does liver transplants, causes bleeding from the brain, spinal cord injuries, and lifetime pain. But we're worried about the wealth manager losing his job. We're worried about the wealth manager losing a little bit of money. Now, in other news from Colorado, to bring this back to the Radical Rant and the subject of this show, medical marijuana grower Chris Barkowitz copped a 5-year plea deal to avoid life in prison. Because it was a federal case, he was forbidden from mentioning Colorado's medical marijuana law or any medical uses of the marijuana he was growing. Observers believe Barkowitz bragging about getting rich from medical marijuana to the local TV news crew was the primary motivation for the federal prosecution. So just so we're straight here, in Colorado, if you grow marijuana for sick people to use with their doctor's recommendation, and you might get rich doing so, you face life in prison. If, however, you grow wealth for rich people and run down a doctor and make him sick doing so, you get a slap on the wrist. Folks, this double standard in our judicial system just highlights how upset people are with the state of affairs in American courtrooms today. This is something that transcends Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative. I defy anyone to read that story of Martin Erzinger and not be offended to the core and repulsed by the notion that we have this system that says, oh, well, he's a rich guy, different rules apply. I think we're all a little upset by that. And I know we're upset by our justice system that feels like we need to lock up a good man like Chris Barkowitz, who never harmed anyone, but this guy who runs down a doctor on a bicycle and flees the scene doesn't deserve the same 5 years as Chris Barkowitz, doesn't deserve the felony record that Chris Barkowitz is going to have to live with. I'm afraid that's unacceptable. This is something I really believe that we should take a look at as marijuana law reformers. First of all, we've got Senator Webb in Virginia has the Criminal Justice Reform Act that he's pushing. And part of this is he wants to review our criminal justice system in whole and the terrible, increase in prison populations and the disproportionate sentencing and the racism and so on, which is just another way of taking a look at the war on drugs without really saying so, right? Senator Webb's not going to come out and say, hey, let's have a commission on the war on drugs. But if he can have a commission on prison sentencing, you can't talk about prison sentencing without talking about the war on drugs. In that same manner, we need to attack this double standard in the judicial system and the blatant hypocrisy and misdirection of our resources that would lock up for 5 years a marijuana grower while letting someone who does violent harm to someone knowingly and leaves the scene of an accident to get away with a mere slap on the wrist. We see this all the time. While I was in Oakland, there was a lot of commotion about the upcoming sentencing in the Oscar Grant case. Oscar Grant, young black man who was shot to death on a BART platform. BART's their transit system, subway. And got shot to death by a cop while he was face down, and I think he was handcuffed. I don't know if he was handcuffed, but he was definitely face down on the ground. And the policeman in the case said that he had meant to tase him, but instead of reaching on his left side where the taser is kept and is kind of square feeling, light and plastic, he reached over to the right side where his firearm was, a large .40 caliber handgun that's very heavy and cold, and you can definitely tell the feel difference right when you pull him. He just accidentally grabbed the right firearm instead of the left firearm and killed the guy. And I know Oakland rioted over this in the summertime when this verdict was first announced. And now the sentencing, I haven't gotten the latest updates from Oakland, but I know they're not very happy about that. There are cases like this all over the country. All over the country where we see rich people getting away with stuff that none of you and I could ever get away with, where we see instances of obvious racism on display, but no repercussions for the people involved with it. And now we can add to that the people who are legal medical marijuana patients, legal medical marijuana growers in their respective states that are being taken down by federal prosecution and this misdirection of our resources. We need to highlight this to the American people, to say, you really want to lock up the pot grower while we've got rapists running free. You really want to lock up the pot grower while Wall Street is getting away with your 401ks. You really want to lock up the pot grower while the bankers are laughing and your house is being foreclosed on. We need to tie the marijuana prohibition into every other argument there is in the political sphere. Believe me, I can do it. You name a subject, I can tie marijuana prohibition to it. We've got to let people know that this is not a fringe issue. This is an issue that gets to the very core of American rights and American justice, because it does. I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us here for the show. Toker Talk Radio coming up next here on the live podcast. And for those of you listening to the recorded podcast, we'll see you later. And until next time, take care of each other, Tokers.